Number 1. Valentin Elizalde. In the dusty, sun-scorched heart of northern Mexico, there exists a genre of music that is more dangerous than any other art form on the planet. It is called narco corrido. These are ballads of bravery, tales of drug lords, shootouts, and betrayals, sung by men who often walk the same razor's edge as the outlaws they celebrate. To be a singer in this world is to be a war correspondent without a press pass, a voice that can make you a king or a corpse, depending on who is listening. And in 2006, there was no king greater than Valentin Elizalde, known to the world as El Gallo de Oro, or the Golden Rooster. He was a superstar, a man with a deep, commanding voice and a charisma that filled arenas from Sinaloa to California. But Valentin Elizalde made a fatal mistake. He sang the wrong song in the wrong city to the wrong audience. This is the devastating story of an assassination that wasn't just a murder. It was a message sent in a hail of machine gun fire, a public execution that signaled the beginning of a war on music itself. We are investigating the 10 most terrifying cases where singers were silenced by the ruthlessness of organized crime. If you believe that the truth behind these cartel crimes deserves to be exposed, and that artists should never die for their lyrics, please subscribe to this channel right now to join our community of investigators. And if you appreciate this deep dive into the most dangerous music scene in the world, hit the like button to support the channel. To understand the death of the Golden Rooster, you have to understand the geography of the Mexican drug war in 2006. Valentin Elizalde was a legend, beloved by the people, but he was also rumored to have ties to the Sinaloa cartel, led by the infamous El Chapo. One of his most popular songs, a track titled Mis Enemigos, To My Enemies, was widely interpreted as an anthem for the Sinaloa cartel, a lyrical attack mocking their bitter rivals, the Gulf Cartel, and their militarized enforcers, Los Zetas. On the night of November 25, 2006, Valentin was scheduled to perform at a fair in Reynosa, Tamaulipas. Reynosa was not neutral ground. It was the stronghold, the absolute heart of Zeta territory. He had been warned not to go. He had been warned specifically not to sing that song. But Valentin was a man of pride. He was the Golden Rooster. He didn't back down. In a move of supreme defiance that has been debated for nearly 20 years, he opened his set with A Mis Enemigos. And then, to make sure the message was received, he closed the concert with it too. He sang the insults directly into the faces of the cartel members sitting in the audience. It was an act of bravery, or perhaps recklessness, that signed his death warrant before the applause had even faded. The concert ended in triumph. Valentin left the stage, surrounded by fans, signing autographs, soaking in the adoration. He climbed into a black Chevrolet Suburban with his manager and his driver. They pulled out of the venue, heading for the airport, believing they had survived the night. They traveled only 100 yards. 2 vehicles boxed them in. A group of men armed with AK-47s and AR-15s stepped out. They didn't ask for money. They didn't try to kidnap him. They unleashed a storm of lead. Over 70 rounds were fired into the Suburban. The sound was deafening, a military-grade ambush on a civilian vehicle. Inside, there was nowhere to hide. Valentin Elizalde was struck multiple times in the torso, head, and arms. He died instantly, slumped in the back seat of the car, clutching the gold chain around his neck. His manager and driver were also killed. The only survivor was his cousin, Tano, who was wounded but lived to tell the horrific tale. The Zetas had sent their message. In their territory, you do not sing for the enemy. The murder of Valentin Elizalde changed everything. It was the moment the narco corrido went from a folk tradition to a blood sport. The internet was flooded with gruesome autopsy photos, a final indignity to the legend, allegedly leaked by corrupt officials to further terrorize the public. His funeral was attended by tens of thousands, a state of mourning for a man who died defending his right to sing what he wanted. This case raises a terrifying question about the power of art. Valentin knew the risks, yet he sang the song anyway. Do you see this as an act of foolish ego, or was it the ultimate stand of an artist refusing to be censored by fear? I want to hear your thoughts on the price of free speech in the comments below. The Golden Rooster was silenced, but his death only amplified the legend, turning him into a martyr for a genre that is written in blood. If this harrowing story of the singer who stared down a cartel and lost left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video with anyone interested in true crime history, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 2, where we will uncover the torture and murder of the lead singer of K-Paz de la Sierra.
Number 2. Sergio Gómez. We leave the bullet-riddled streets of Reynosa and travel south into the lush, mountainous, and deadly terrain of Michoacán to witness a crime that escalated the brutality of the drug war to a level that even the most hardened observers found difficult to comprehend. This is the harrowing, nightmarish story of Sergio Gómez, the lead singer of the supergroup K-Paz de la Sierra. In 2007, Sergio was not just a singer, he was the face of a movement. He had popularized Duranguense, a fast-paced, energetic style of regional Mexican music that had taken Chicago and Mexico by storm. He was an international superstar, a man who filled stadiums with dancing fans, a beloved figure who was seen as a bridge between the immigrant communities in the U.S. and their homeland. But while Valentín Elizalde was executed in a flash of gunfire, Sergio Gómez was forced to endure a slow, agonizing descent into hell, becoming the victim of a torture session so medieval, so personal, and so gruesome that it suggests his murder was not just business, it was a punishment for a perceived transgression against the lords of the underworld. This is the account of a warning ignored, a convoy ambushed in the dark, and a body found on a roadside that bore the marks of a cartel that prided itself on divine justice. We are investigating the 10 most terrifying cases where singers were silenced by organized crime. This case stands out as the darkest chapter in the history of Duranguense, a reminder that, in the eyes of the cartels, a microphone is no shield against a blowtorch. To understand the fate of Sergio Gómez, you have to understand the political landscape of Michoacán in December 2007. The state was under the control of La Familia Michoacana, a cartel known for its pseudo-religious ideology and its extreme, performative violence. They demanded absolute respect and total submission. Sergio Gómez and his band were scheduled to perform a massive concert at the Estadio Morelos in Morelia, the cartel's stronghold. But just like Elizalde, Sergio had received a warning. The threats were specific and chilling. Do not perform in Morelia. The reasons for the threat are still debated. Some say it was because K-Paz de la Sierra had performed for rival cartels like Los Zetas. Others say it was a personal dispute involving a woman linked to a cartel boss. Whatever the reason, the message was clear: stay away. But Sergio Gómez was at the height of his fame. He had contracts to honor, fans to please, and perhaps a belief that his celebrity status offered him a layer of protection. He made the fatal decision to play the show. On the night of December 1, 2007, he took the stage. He sang his heart out. He performed with the energy that made him a legend. The show ended without a single gunshot. He likely breathed a sigh of relief, believing the threats were empty bluffs. He left the stadium in a celebratory mood, climbing into a Suburban with 2 businessmen to head to an after-party or hotel. But the eyes of La Familia were watching. As the convoy of K-Paz vehicles navigated the highway out of Morelia, the trap was sprung. A group of armed trucks intercepted the Suburban carrying the singer. It wasn't chaotic shootout, it was a tactical abduction. The gunmen forced the vehicles to stop. They didn't want the band, They didn't want the money, they wanted Sergio. They dragged him out of the car. The other passengers were eventually released, a move that signaled this was a targeted hit, a specific extraction of a high-value target. For the next 24 hours, Sergio Gómez vanished into the black hole of the cartel's torture chambers. What happened during those hours is a horror story that forensic pathologists had to piece together. He wasn't just killed, he was dismantled. When his body was finally discovered on December 3rd, dumped on the side of a road near Chiquimitio, the signs of suffering were absolute. He had been strangled, likely with a cord. He had been beaten severely, his face swollen and bruised. But the detail that sent a chill through the spine of the entire music industry was the burns. His genitals had been burned with a lighter or a blowtorch. It was a specific, sadistic mutilation that signaled a deep personal fury, or perhaps a punishment for manhood or ego. It was a message written on the body of a pop star. This is what happens when you disobey. The news of his death broke the heart of the Duranguense movement. Thousands attended his funeral in Mexico City and Chicago. Fans wept in the streets, but the investigation was paralyzed by fear. Everyone knew who did it. The shadow of Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, the leader of La Familia, loomed large, but no one dared to testify. The official story remains a haze of rumors and investigations that went nowhere. Some theories suggest he had unknowingly performed at a private party for a rival cartel, sealing his fate. Others suggest he had refused to launder money. But the most prevailing theory is simply that he defied an order. In the world of the cartel, disobedience is a capital offense. This case is terrifying because of the cruelty involved. Sergio wasn't just silenced, he was made to suffer. Do you believe that artists who perform in cartel territories are complicit in the system, or are they victims of an environment where they have no choice to play? Is it possible to be a star in Mexico without crossing paths with the Narcos? I want to hear your thoughts on this impossible moral maze in the comments below. Sergio Gómez's voice still plays on radios across Mexico and the U.S., his songs like Mi Credo remaining timeless classics. But his death marked the end of the innocence for the Duranguense genre. It proved that the cartels were not just fighting each other, they were fighting for control of the culture itself. Sergio Gómez sang for the people, but he died for the cartel, a martyr to a war he tried to sing above. If this brutal story of a superstar tortured for doing his job left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video with anyone who follows regional Mexican music, and make sure you are subscribed for part 3, where we will uncover the hospital assassination of a female singer that shocked a nation.
Number 3. Zayda Peña. We leave the male-dominated arenas of Duranguense and Norteño to witness a crime that shattered the unwritten rule that women, and specifically singers of romantic ballads, were off-limits in the drug war. This is the terrifying double-tap execution of Zayda Peña Arjona, the lead singer of Zayda y los Culpables. Unlike Elizalde or Gómez, Zayda wasn't known for singing about drug lords or shootouts. Her music was grupero, songs about love, heartbreak, and fatal shots of a romantic nature. She was a beloved figure, a woman with a powerful voice and a gentle soul who sang to the hearts of the people, not the egos of the cartels. But in 2007, Matamoros, a border city just across from Brownsville, Texas, was a war zone where innocence was no defense. The city was the stronghold of the Gulf Cartel, a place where the air was thick with tension and paranoia. Zayda's tragedy is unique and horrifying because she survived her own murder. At first, she was shot, she bled, and she fought to stay alive only to find that the cartel's reach extends past the police tape and into the sterile, safe halls of the intensive care unit. This is the devastating account of a hitman who refused to leave a job unfinished, walking into a hospital like the angel of death to silence a woman who was already defenseless
strapped to a bed and fighting for her life. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands out because it violated the one sanctuary that should be sacred, the hospital. It proved that in Mexico's drug war, there is no asylum, no neutral ground, and no mercy, even for the wounded. The nightmare began on the night of November 29, 2007. Zayda was staying at the Motel Monaco in Matamoros. It wasn't a luxury resort. It was a discreet lodging often used for privacy. She was there with a friend, Ana Berta Gonzalez, and a motel employee, Leonardo Sanchez. The atmosphere in the room was likely relaxed, a break from the tour schedule. But the privacy of the motel was shattered by the kick of a boot against the door. A gunman, or perhaps a group of them, burst in. There was no robbery, no negotiation. The attacker opened fire immediately. The room became a slaughterhouse. Ana Berta and the motel employee were killed instantly, executed where they stood. Zayda was the target. The gunman fired at her, striking her in the back. The bullet tore through her, damaging her spine and internal organs. She fell. The gunman, perhaps believing she was dead, or perhaps spooked by the noise, fled the scene. But Zayda Peña was a fighter. She didn't die on the motel floor. When the emergency services arrived, they found her barely clinging to life but breathing. She was rushed to the Alfredo Pumarejo Hospital in Matamoros. The doctors performed emergency surgery. They stabilized her. She was moved to the intensive care unit. It was a miracle. The news spread. Zayda had survived. Her fans prayed. Her family gathered. They thought the horror was over. But the killers were watching. They were listening. The news that Zayda was alive wasn't a relief to them. It was a problem. A botched hit is a sign of weakness, and it leaves a witness who can speak. On the early morning of December 1, less than 36 hours after the initial attack, the hospital became the scene of the second act. It was quiet. Nurses were making rounds. Security was supposedly present. But the cartel walks through doors that others cannot. An assassin entered the hospital. He walked past the reception. He walked through the corridors. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't care who saw him. He found the intensive care unit. He found Zayda's bed. She was helpless, sedated, hooked up to machines, recovering from a gunshot wound to the back. She was the definition of vulnerable. The killer stood over her. He didn't whisper a threat. He raised a 9mm handgun and fired multiple times directly into her face. It was a coup de grace, a final stroke of absolute, inhuman cruelty. He then calmly walked out of the hospital, vanishing into the Matamoros dawn. Zayda Peña was dead at 28. She had survived a massacre, only to be executed in her hospital bed. The motive for this relentless pursuit remains one of the great mysteries of the grupero world. Why Zayda? She didn't sing narco-corridos. She wasn't a player. Rumors swirled that she had been romantically involved with a capo from a rival cartel, or perhaps she was simply in the wrong motel room at the wrong time, witnessing something she wasn't supposed to see. The crime of passion angle was debated, but the cold efficiency of the hospital hit suggested something far more organized. It suggested a professional cleanup operation. The sheer audacity of killing a woman in the ICU sent a message of total impunity. It told the citizens of Mexico that the state could not protect them, not even when they were surrounded by doctors and police. It was a psychological blow that resonated far beyond the music industry. This case terrifies us because it destroys the illusion of safety. We like to believe that once the ambulance arrives, we are safe. Zayda's death proves that for the cartels, the hit isn't over until the target is in the ground. Do you believe the hospital staff or police were complicit in letting the killer in, or is the fear of the cartel so great that people simply look the other way to survive? Was this a failure of security or a triumph of corruption? I want to hear your thoughts on this terrifying violation of sanctuary in the comments below. Zayda Peña's music is still cherished, her ballads of love and loss taking on a tragic new meaning. But her legacy is forever tied to those 2 nights in Matamoros, a grim reminder that in a lawless state, survival is just a temporary condition. She was the singer who couldn't be killed by the first bullet, so they came back with a second one, silencing a voice that had only ever sung about love. If this shocking story of a hospital assassination left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video to keep Zayda's memory alive, and make sure you are subscribed for part 4, where we will travel to Phoenix, Arizona to uncover the restaurant execution of a banda superstar that was caught on camera.
Number 4. Tito Torbellino. We cross the border back into the United States, to the sun-baked sprawl of Phoenix, Arizona, to meet a man who was the embodiment of the American dream with a Mexican soul. This is the story of Tomás Tovar Rascón, known to the millions who adored him as Tito Torbellino. He wasn't born in the cartel Badlands, he was born in Phoenix. He was a U.S. citizen, a talented accordion player and songwriter who built an empire from the ground up in the States. But his heart and his music beat for the South. Tito was a superstar of the banda genre, a man who sang narco corridos with a style and swagger that made him a legend on both sides of the border. He wore designer suits, drove luxury cars, and sang about the high-stakes life of the narcos with a familiarity that thrilled his fans. But Tito's tragedy lies in the fatal allure of the homeland. Despite being safe in Arizona, despite having a career that could have existed entirely within the U.S., he felt the pull to perform in Mexico, to bring his music to the heart of the culture. On a bright May afternoon in 2014, that pull led him to a seafood restaurant in Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, a city known for its agriculture and its cartel violence. He thought he was just grabbing lunch before a show. He didn't know he was walking into a trap set by men who didn't care about his American passport or his fame. This is the devastating account of a public execution carried out with military precision in a room full of families eating shrimp cocktails, proving that in the world of narco corridos there are no borders, and the wrong song can travel faster than a bullet. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands out because Tito Torbellino was an outsider, a gringo by birth, who mastered a Mexican art form only to be consumed by the very violence he romanticized in his lyrics. The timeline of the assassination is terrifyingly mundane. It was May 29, 2014. Tito was 33 years old. He was scheduled to perform at a massive concert, El Palenque de la Expo, in Ciudad Obregón, Sonora. He had arrived in the city early and decided to eat at Red, a popular upscale Chinese restaurant known for its seafood fusion. He was with 2 friends. The atmosphere was relaxed. Tito was laughing, checking his phone, perhaps thinking about the set list for that night. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't surrounded by an army of bodyguards. He felt safe in the public eye. But the cartel has eyes everywhere. As Tito ate, a group of 6 men entered the restaurant. They didn't look like fans. They moved with coordination. 2 of them walked straight to Tito's table. They didn't ask for an autograph. They didn't say a word. They drew 9mm handguns and opened fire at point-blank range. It was a ferocious, targeted attack. Tito was hit multiple times in the head and chest. He collapsed onto the table, his life ending in a chaotic burst of gunfire and shattered plates. The gunman turned and walked out, calm and professional, disappearing into the Sonoran heat. The other diners screamed, diving under tables, but the shooters weren't interested in them. This was a specific contract, a hit. Tito was rushed to a local hospital in a police car because the ambulance wasn't fast enough, but he was pronounced dead on arrival. The news sent shockwaves through Phoenix and Sonora. The whirlwind, Torbellino, had been stopped.
The investigation was immediately clouded by the fog of the drug war. Rumors swirled. Had Tito sung a song that offended the wrong plaza boss? Had he been seen with a woman connected to a rival cartel? Or was it simply that he was a high-profile target, a trophy kill for a group looking to assert dominance? The police found the getaway car abandoned nearby, but no arrests were ever made. The case remains officially unsolved, a cold file in a city with too many bodies. But the most chilling aspect of the murder was the precision. 6 men, broad daylight, a crowded restaurant. It spoke of a power that feared no witnesses and no law. This case highlights the unique danger of the transnational star. Tito could have stayed in Phoenix and lived a long life. Do you think the allure of authenticity, the need to perform in Mexico to be taken seriously, is what kills these artists? Is it worth risking your life to sing in the heartland of the genre, or should American-born singers stay on their side of the fence? I want to hear your thoughts on the price of credibility in the comments below. Tito Torbellino's funeral in Phoenix was massive, attended by thousands. His music lives on, particularly his corridos, which are now listened to with a new, grim understanding. He was the boy from Arizona who flew too close to the Mexican sun. He proved that you can leave the country, but if you sing the songs of the war will eventually find you, even over a plate of food. If this shocking story of an American star executed in Mexico left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video with anyone who loves banda music, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 5, where we will uncover the story of a singer who was ambushed in his own home in a crime that wiped out a rising legend.
Number 5. Diego Rivas. We return to the epicenter of the drug war, the sweltering, dangerous streets of Culiacán, Sinaloa, the city that serves as the spiritual and financial capital of the Mexican cartel underworld. This is the story of a man who was not just a singer. He was a chronicler of the Movimiento Alterado, a new, hyper-violent wave of narco corridos that didn't just hint at violence, it celebrated it with graphic detail. His name was Diego Rivas. In 2011, he was the voice of a new generation, a handsome, charismatic star who sang about bazookas, armored convoys, and the high-ranking lieutenants of the Sinaloa cartel. He was rising fast, his songs playing in the trucks of the very men he sang about, earning him fame, money, and the dangerous illusion of protection. But in Culiacán, protection is a myth, and loyalty is fluid. Diego Rivas found out the hard way that when you sing the praises of one lion, you become the prey of every other predator in the jungle. This is the terrifying account of a home ambush that turned a private party into a massacre, a military-style execution carried out in the dead of night that silenced a rising star and 2 others, proving that in the crosshairs of the cartel, your celebrity status doesn't make you bulletproof. It just makes you a bigger target. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands out because it struck at the domestic heart of the musician's life. He wasn't killed on a stage or in a car, but in a home, surrounded by friends, in a moment of perceived safety that was shattered by the roar of AK-47s. The timeline of the slaughter takes us to the early morning hours of November 13, 2011. It was 4 a.m. Diego Rivas was in the Colonia Lázaro Cárdenas neighborhood of Culiacán. He was hanging out with friends at a private residence. It wasn't a massive concert, it was an intimate gathering, a moment to relax after the pressures of the road. The group was drinking, talking, perhaps listening to music. They felt secure in their own territory. But the streets of Culiacán have eyes. A convoy of vehicles was moving through the neighborhood, hunting. These weren't police, they were hitmen, heavily armed soldiers of a rival faction. They knew exactly where Diego was. They pulled up to the house, they didn't knock, they didn't issue a warning. They unleashed. He wasn't the only victim. 2 other men, reportedly his cousin and a friend, were also slaughtered in the hail of gunfire. The attack was so intense that the police found shell casings scattered across the street like gravel. The killers vanished into the Culiacán night, leaving behind a scene that looked less like a crime and more like a war atrocity.
The investigation into Diego Rivas's murder followed the grim, familiar pattern of the drug war: silence, fear, and unsolved files. Rumors circulated that he had performed for the wrong people, or perhaps that a specific song had offended a rival cartel leader who felt mocked by the lyrics. In Culiacán, a song is never just a song. It is a political statement, and political statements are often answered with lead. Diego Rivas is remembered as a martyr of the Movimiento Alterado, a young man who captured the violent spirit of his time and was ultimately consumed by it. This case forces us to confront the reality of glamorizing violence. Diego sang about bazookas and convoys, and he died in a military-style ambush. Do you believe that the music fuels the violence, or is it just a reflection of a reality that would exist anyway? I want to hear your thoughts on the relationship between art and war in the comments below.
Number 6. Luis Mendoza. We move forward in time to 2019, returning to the blood-soaked streets of Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, to witness a murder that redefined the concept of overkill. This is the terrifying story of Luis Mendoza, the lead singer of Los Ronaldos, a group known for their upbeat, energetic narco-corridos. Luis was young, flashy, and nicknamed the Ronaldinho for his resemblance to the soccer star and his joyful demeanor. He was a rising star who loved the spotlight, posting his life on social media and celebrating the fast-paced lifestyle of the buchon culture. But in Sonora, a state torn apart by a brutal war between factions of the Sinaloa cartel and the Caborca cartel, visibility is a liability. On a bright Saturday afternoon in July, Luis Mendoza was driving his white Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck through the busy streets of the city. He was with his manager. He wasn't hiding, he was living his life. But he was driving into a trap that had been set with the level of firepower usually reserved for a battlefield. This is the devastating account of an assassination that involved not 1, not 10, but over 300 bullets. A public execution designed not just to kill a man, but to erase him from existence. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands out because of the sheer, overwhelming volume of violence, a statement so loud it echoed across the entire country. The ambush occurred on July 6, 2019, at around 4 p.m. It was broad daylight. Luis Mendoza was driving down Boulevard Morelos, a main artery of the city. Suddenly, 2 vehicles, a heavy-duty truck and a sedan, cut him off. They blocked his path, forcing the Silverado to a halt. Gunmen spilled out of the vehicles. They were armed with high-caliber assault rifles, likely AK-47s and AR-15s. They didn't issue a warning. They didn't ask him to step out. They simply pulled the triggers and didn't stop. For several seconds, the street was filled with the roar of automatic fire. The gunmen sprayed the truck from the front and the sides, turning the windshield into a sieve and the doors into Swiss cheese. The sound was apocalyptic. Passers-by dove for cover, filming the horror on their phones from a distance. The truck, riddled with holes, rolled forward and crashed into a fence, but the occupants were already dead. When the police and forensics teams arrived, they were stunned by the scene. They marked over 100 shell casings on the ground, but the total count of impacts on the vehicle and the bodies was estimated to be much higher, with some reports citing up to 300 shots fired. Luis Mendoza and his manager were decimated. The autopsy was a grim formality. There was no surviving that storm of lead. The overkill was the message. In the language of the cartels, firing hundreds of rounds isn't just about ensuring death. It is about total dominance. It signifies that the victim didn't just annoy someone, he enraged them. It suggests a deep personal vendetta or a punishment for a betrayal. Rumors swirled that Luis had been singing songs that glorified one faction while performing in the territory of another, a fatal error in the shifting geography of the drug war. No arrests were made. The killers melted back into the city, leaving the white truck as a perforated monument to their power. This case terrifies us because of the public nature of the violence. 300 shots on a busy street in the middle of the afternoon. Do you think this level of violence indicates a complete breakdown of law and order, or is it a specific tactic used to terrorize the population into silence?
Was Luis Mendoza a soldier in the culture war, or just a singer who got caught in the crossfire? I want to hear your thoughts on this massacre in the comments below. Luis Mendoza's death was a viral event. The videos of his truck circulated online, a gruesome reminder to every other singer in the region. He was the Ronaldinho of the mic, a young man who wanted to entertain, but who ended up as a statistic in a war that has no rules and no end. If this shocking story of a singer wiped out by a hail of 100 bullets left you stunned, please hit the like button. Share this video to show the reality of the danger these artists face, and make sure you are subscribed for part 7, where we will uncover the story of a singer who was murdered just hours after denying rumors of his own death.
Number 7. El Shaka. We remain in the dangerous, sun-drenched corridor of Sonora and Sinaloa to witness a tragedy that plays out like a grim, ironic screenplay. A death that was announced before it even happened. This is the surreal and heartbreaking story of Sergio Vega, known to the millions who adored him as El Shaka. He was a superstar of the banda genre, a man with a powerful voice and a rugged, handsome charisma that made him a heartthrob and a legend. But in 2010, El Shaka was living in a unique kind of hell, a psychological torture chamber where the internet and the streets were constantly whispering that he was already dead. In the narco culture of Mexico, rumors of a singer's death are often not just gossip. They are warnings, threats released to test the waters or to terrify the target. For months, Sergio Vega had been fighting these ghosts, constantly having to reassure his family and his fans that he was still breathing. But on a Saturday in June, the ghosts became flesh and blood. This is the devastating account of a man who gave a press conference to deny his own murder, only to be executed by a hit squad just hours later on a lonely highway. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands out because of the cruel timing, a coincidence so sharp it feels like a setup, proving that in the crosshairs of the cartel, you can run from the rumors, but you cannot outdrive the bullets. To understand the terror of Sergio Vega's final day, you have to look at the interview he gave on June 26, 2010. He was in Ciudad Obregón, preparing for a concert. The rumors of his assassination had reached a fever pitch that morning. Reporters asked him, point blank, "Are you afraid? Are you dead?" Sergio, ever the professional, smiled. He looked into the cameras and said, "It happens to me for years now. Someone tells a radio station or a newspaper I have been killed or suffered an accident. And then I have to call my dear mom who has heart trouble to reassure her." He told them he had increased his security, but he refused to stop singing. "I, Sergio Vega, am alive," he declared. It was a moment of defiance, a man reclaiming his narrative. He finished the interview, got into his car, and began the drive to the town of Alway, Sinaloa, for a show that night. He was driving his red Cadillac CTS, a flash of luxury on the dangerous Federal Highway 15. He wasn't traveling with a convoy of armored trucks. He was driving himself with a companion. He believed by dispelling the rumors he had cleared the air. He was wrong. The rumors were not a mistake. They were a preamble. As the red Cadillac cruised down the highway near the toll booth at San Miguel Zapotitlan, the trap snapped shut. A truck began to tail him. It wasn't passing, it was hunting. The men inside the truck opened fire. This wasn't a stationary ambush, it was a high-speed rolling gun battle. Sergio Vega, realizing he was being hunted by the very death he had just denied, floored the accelerator. He tried to outrun the hitmen. But a Cadillac cannot outrun an AK-47 bullet. The gunman sprayed the car with high-powered rifle fire. Sergio was hit. He lost control of the vehicle. The red Cadillac careened off the road, crashing through a fence and slamming into a dirt embankment in a cloud of dust and smoke. The car was wrecked, but the hitmen were not satisfied with a crash. They pulled over.
They walked down the embankment to the wreckage. They didn't want to leave any doubt this time. They fired again, finishing the job at close range. When the police arrived, they found El Shaka dead behind the wheel, shot more than 30 times. The man who had told the world, "I am alive," at noon was lying in a morgue by sunset. The news broke the internet and the hearts of millions. The interview footage was replayed endlessly, a haunting final testament of a man who was unknowingly narrating his own end. The killers were never caught. The motive remains the standard, murky mix of cartel politics. Perhaps he played for a rival. Perhaps he refused a private concert. Or perhaps he was simply a high-profile target used to send a message to the government or other artists. But the psychological impact was singular. It taught every singer in Mexico that denying a threat doesn't make it go away. This case is a masterclass in psychological warfare. The rumors of his death likely flushed him out or made him lower his guard. Do you believe the rumors were a deliberate tactic by the cartel to terrorize him before the hit, or just a dark coincidence? I want to hear your thoughts on this cruel twist of fate in the comments below. Sergio Vega's music, especially his hits like Millonario de Amor, remains a staple of Mexican radio. But his legacy is forever tied to that red Cadillac and the interview. He was the singer who argued with his own obituary and lost. He died on the road, a soldier of the stage who proved that in the drug war, the truth is often the first casualty, followed closely by the storyteller. If this eerie story of the singer who predicted his survival only to meet his doom left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video to keep El Shaka's music playing, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 8, where we will uncover the massacre of an entire band, 17 people kidnapped and executed in one night.
Number 8. Kombo, Colombia. We move from the targeted assassinations of solo stars to a crime of such staggering scale and collective brutality that it redefines the very concept of a massacre. This is not the story of a singer killed in a car or a restaurant. This is the story of an entire musical ecosystem. Singers, musicians, roadies, and engineers wiped off the face of the earth in a single night of industrialized slaughter. This is the nightmare of Kombo, Colombia, a popular band known for playing vallenato music, a Colombian style that had found a massive, fervent audience in the northern state of Nuevo León. They were a party band, a group of 18 men who brought joy, rhythm, and dancing to the clubs of Monterrey. But in the fractured, paranoid world of the Mexican drug war in 2013, even the music of joy could be interpreted as an act of treason. This is the devastating account of a private concert that was actually a trap, a mass abduction that emptied a stage and filled a mass grave, and a lone survivor whose miraculous escape from the firing squad revealed the depths of the depravity of Los Zetas. We're investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case stands alone because it wasn't a murder, it was a purge. A systematic elimination of 17 lives that proved that, for the cartels, a band is just a group of enemy combatants with instruments instead of guns. The timeline of the atrocity takes us to the night of January 24th, 2013. Kombo, Colombia had been hired to play a private gig at a bar called La Carreta in the municipality of Hidalgo, just north of Monterrey. Private gigs are the lifeblood of the regional music scene. They pay well, often in cash, and offer a level of intimacy with fans. But they are also the most dangerous environment a musician can enter. You are on someone else's territory, behind closed doors, completely at the mercy of the host. The band played for hours. The mood was festive. But around midnight, the atmosphere shifted violently. The music didn't stop because the set was over, it stopped because the venue was stormed. A fleet of vehicles arrived, over a dozen armed men identifying themselves as members of Los Zetas, the most ruthless paramilitary cartel in Mexico. They didn't rob the patrons, they didn't shoot up the bar, they went straight for the stage. They ordered the musicians and their crew to stop playing. At gunpoint,
They forced all 18 members of the Kombo Colombia entourage outside. They were shoved into waiting vans and trucks. In an instant, the band was gone, abducted into the void of the Nuevo León night. They were driven for hours, taken down dirt roads to an abandoned ranch in the municipality of Mina. The terror inside those vans is unimaginable. 18 men, friends and colleagues, realizing that this wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. The Zetas were known for their brutality, for leaving no loose ends. When they arrived at the ranch, the interrogation began. The cartel members reportedly asked them about their connections to a rival group, the Gulf Cartel. The rumor was that Kombo Colombia had played too many gigs in Gulf territory, or perhaps had accepted sponsorship from the enemy. In the binary logic of the war, this made them traitors. But there was no trial. There was only a well, an abandoned, dry water well on the property. The gunmen lined the musicians up. One by one, they were asked a question, and then they were shot. It was an assembly line of death. After each execution, the body was thrown into the narrow shaft of the well, piling up in a gruesome mass of humanity at the bottom. But amidst the slaughter, one man found a miracle. One band member, whose identity has been protected for years, but whose testimony broke the case, managed to escape. In the chaos of the execution line, perhaps while the gunmen were distracted by reloading or moving a body, he ran. He sprinted into the dark, thorny brush of the desert. The gunmen fired at him, but he disappeared into the night. He ran for miles, bleeding, terrified, listening to the gunshots that were claiming his friends behind him. He eventually reached a road and flagged down help. He led the authorities back to the ranch. When the police and forensics teams arrived days later, they found the well. It took them days to recover the remains. They pulled out 17 bodies. The vocalists, the saxophonist, the keyboardist, the roadies, all gone. Kombo Colombia had been extinguished. The motive was officially confirmed as territorial reprisal. The band had reportedly played for the Gulf Cartel, and the Zetas decided to send a message that neutrality did not exist. If you played for the enemy, you died with the enemy. This case terrifies us because it targets the working class of the music industry. These weren't millionaire superstars. They were working musicians trying to feed their families. Do you think bands should refuse private gigs in cartel territories to stay safe? Or is that impossible when the cartels control the entire economy of the nightlife? Is there any way to be a musician in these regions without picking a side? I want to hear your thoughts on this impossible survival choice in the comments below. The massacre of Kombo Colombia remains the deadliest attack on a musical group in Mexican history. It silenced an entire genre in the region for years, as other bands refused to play for fear of the same fate. The 17 men of Kombo Colombia died together, thrown into a dark hole in the desert, a tragic reminder that in the drug war, the music doesn't just stop, it is murdered. If this horrific story of the night the music was massacred left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video to ensure these 17 men are remembered, and make sure you are subscribed for part 9, where we will uncover the story of a diva de banda who died in a plane crash that many believed was a bomb planted by a cartel.
Number 9. Jenni Rivera. We move from the mass graves of the desert to the high-altitude terror of the skies over Nuevo León to investigate the death of the most powerful woman in the history of regional Mexican music. This is the heartbreaking, controversial, and endlessly debated story of Jenni Rivera, La Diva de la Banda. She was more than a singer, she was a force of nature, a single mother, a business mogul, and a voice for the broken and the brave. She conquered a male-dominated genre with songs about resilience, heartbreak, and female empowerment, selling over 20 million records and becoming a cultural icon on both sides of the border. But Jenni Rivera's rise to the top was shadowed by the same dark clouds that hang over so many stars in Mexico, the cartels. While her death was officially ruled an aviation accident, millions of fans and industry insiders believe that the crash was not a failure of mechanics, but a targeted assassination. A bomb planted or a sabotage executed by a cartel leader who felt disrespected. This is the devastating account of a Learjet that fell from the sky at 600 miles per hour,
obliterating a legend and sparking a mystery that refuses to die. We are investigating the 10 most chilling cases of singers silenced by organized crime. This case is included because even if the NTSB says accident, the context of death threats, the rumors of cartel involvement, and Jenni's own terrifying confession just hours before the flight paint a picture of a woman who knew she was being hunted. To understand the paranoia surrounding her death, you have to look at the environment in December 2012. Jenni Rivera was at the peak of her fame, but she was also navigating dangerous waters. She had reportedly been threatened by cartel organizations in the past, warned not to perform in certain cities or to pay piso, extortion fees, that she refused to pay. There were persistent rumors linking her, fairly or unfairly, to the social circles of high-ranking narcos, specifically the Beltran Leyva cartel and the infamous La Barbie. On the night of December 8, 2012, Jenni performed a sold-out show at the Monterrey Arena. It was a triumph. The stage was shaped like a cross, a detail that fans would later point to as a chilling premonition. During the concert, she was emotional, crying as she sang Paloma Negra, dedicating it to her daughter. But behind the scenes, the tension was palpable. Jenni had allegedly confided in her brother Juan and her eldest son that she had received specific death threats. She was told she would be kidnapped or killed if she played Monterrey. She played anyway. She was the diva. She didn't run. After the concert, in the early hours of December 9th, Jenni and her entourage, her publicist, her lawyer, her makeup artist, and her stylist, boarded a private Learjet 25 at the Monterrey International Airport. They were heading to Toluca, near Mexico City, where she was scheduled to appear on The Voice Mexico. The plane took off at 3 a.m. into the dark, clear sky. It climbed to 28,000 feet. Everything appeared normal on the radar. And then 10 minutes into the flight, the plane did something physically impossible for a normal flight path. It stopped climbing and entered a vertical, near-supersonic nosedive. It fell from the sky like a stone. The Learjet slammed into the mountainous terrain of Iturbi de Nuevo León at a speed estimated to be over 600 miles per hour. The impact was so violent that the plane didn't just crash, it disintegrated. There were no large pieces of wreckage left, only fragments of metal and clothing scattered over a wide area. Everyone on board was killed instantly. Jenni Rivera was gone. The official investigation by Mexican and American authorities blamed a series of mechanical failures in the 43-year-old aircraft, specifically a problem with the horizontal stabilizer that caused the nosedive, combined with a pilot who was 78 years old and not licensed to fly that specific plane at night. It was a tragedy of negligence. But the cartel theory exploded immediately. A protected witness, later identified as a cartel enforcer, claimed that the hit was ordered by a drug lord who felt Jenni had betrayed him or refused to launder money. The theory suggests that an explosive was placed on the plane, damaging the controls, or that the pilot was coerced into crashing it, a suicide mission. The fact that the plane nosedived so perfectly vertical fueled speculation of a catastrophic loss of control consistent with an explosion or sabotage. Jenni's own admission that she felt unsafe and the timing of the threats makes the accident explanation hard to swallow for many. This case sits at the intersection of conspiracy and tragedy. Do you believe the official report that it was just an old, broken plane, or does the context of the threats and the vertical dive point to a professional hit? Is it possible for a celebrity to operate in that region without crossing the cartels? I want to hear your theory on the death of La Diva in the comments below. Jenni Rivera's death left a void that has never been filled. She was a warrior who fought through domestic abuse, scandal, and poverty to become a queen, only to fall from the sky. Whether it was a loose screw or a cartel bomb, the result was the same: the silencing of a voice that spoke for the resilience of millions. She remains a cultural saint, the woman who died flying too high in a world that wanted to pull her down. If this mysterious and heartbreaking story of the diva who fell from the sky left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video with every Jenni Rivera fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 10, the final and most historically significant chapter, where we will travel to Chile to uncover the brutal execution of a folk singer by a military dictatorship.
Number 10. Víctor Jara. We end our journey by expanding the definition of organized crime to its most terrifying and absolute form, the state itself, when it turns into a criminal enterprise bent on silencing dissent. We travel south from Mexico to the cold political winter of Santiago, Chile, in 1973, to witness the martyrdom of a man who was much more than a pop star. He was the conscience of a nation. This is the devastating, heroic, and horrific story of Víctor Jara. He was a folk singer, a poet, a theater director, and a university professor who led the Nueva Canción, New Song, movement. He didn't sing about drug dealers or parties. He sang about the poor, the workers, the farmers, and the dream of a socialist equality. To the people of Chile, he was their Bob Dylan, their John Lennon, a man with a guitar and a gentle smile who promised a better world. But to the military junta, led by General Augusto Pinochet, who seized power in a violent CIA-backed coup on September 11, 1973, Víctor Jara was a dangerous enemy. He was a voice that could mobilize millions, and therefore he had to be silenced not just by death, but by a public display of brutality that would terrify anyone who dared to pick up a guitar in protest. This is the account of a singer who was dragged into a sports stadium that had been turned into a concentration camp, tortured in front of thousands of his fans, and executed in the dark bowels of the arena, proving that, while you can kill a man, you cannot kill a song. We end here because this case is the ultimate proof of the power of music. The cartel in this case was the government, and they were so afraid of a folk singer that they sent an army to destroy him. To understand the horror of Víctor Jara's final days, you have to visualize the Chile Stadium in September 1973. It was no longer a place for sports, it was a holding pen for 5,000 political prisoners. Terrified citizens huddled in the bleachers under the watchful eyes of machine gun nests. Víctor Jara was among them. He hadn't run. He had stayed at the technical university to try and protect the students, and he was arrested there. When he was brought into the stadium, he wasn't anonymous. An officer, nicknamed the Prince for his arrogance and cruelty, recognized him immediately. He didn't see a prisoner. He saw a trophy. He reportedly screamed, "Bring that son of a bitch over here." What followed was a torture session designed specifically to destroy Víctor's identity as a musician. They beat him relentlessly. They broke his ribs. They taunted him. But the specific cruelty was reserved for his hands. The hands that had plucked the strings of Te Recuerdo Amanda. The hands that were a symbol of gentle strength. The soldiers smashed his fingers with rifle butts. They stomped on his wrists. They broke his hands so completely that they were reduced to swollen, useless masses of flesh. And then, in a moment of supreme satanic mockery, the prince threw a guitar at Víctor's feet and sneered, "Now sing, you bastard. Play your guitar now." It was a moment meant to break his spirit, to humiliate him in front of the other prisoners. But Víctor Jara did not break. In an act of defiance that stands as one of the greatest moments of courage in human history, he raised his head. He couldn't play the guitar. He couldn't clap. But he still had his voice. He began to sing. He didn't sing a plea for mercy. He sang Venceremos, the anthem of the Popular Unity Coalition. It was a quiet, shaky song at first, but then the other prisoners in the stands began to join in. The stadium filled with the sound of resistance, a choir of the damned singing in the face of their executioners. The military was furious. They realized they had lost control of the narrative. They dragged Víctor away from the crowd, down into the concrete corridors of the stadium locker rooms. They beat him again. And then they finished it. They played a game of Russian roulette with him, and then they riddled his body with machine gun fire. The autopsy later revealed he had been shot 44 times. It was an overkill born of fear. They dumped his body on a street in a shantytown, hoping he would disappear into the pile of anonymous dead.
But a civil servant recognized him in the morgue and secretly alerted his wife, Joan Jara, allowing her to give him a clandestine burial before she fled the country. For decades, the murder of Víctor Jara was a protected secret of the Pinochet regime, but his songs survived. They were smuggled out of cassette tapes, sung in exile, and became anthems for human rights movements around the world. Justice was slow, agonizingly slow. It wasn't until 2018, 45 years after the murder, that 8 retired Chilean military officers were finally convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison for the kidnapping and murder of the folk singer. One of the officers, Pedro Barrientos, had been living comfortably in Florida for decades before being stripped of his U.S. citizenship and deported to face justice. The stadium where he was killed was renamed the Víctor Jara Stadium in 2003, a permanent monument to the man who sang until he died. This case forces us to confront the ultimate role of the artist in society. Víctor Jara could have stayed silent. He could have hidden his hands. But he chose to sing Venceremos, knowing it would kill him. Do you believe that art is a weapon powerful enough to scare an army, or was his death a tragic waste of a brilliant life? Is it better to live on your knees or die on your feet? I want to hear your thoughts on the price of freedom in the comments below. Víctor Jara's death is the final deafening note in our investigation. He proved that organized crime can wear a military uniform, and that the most dangerous thing a singer can do is tell the truth to a power that relies on lies. He was silenced by 44 bullets, but 50 years later, his voice is louder than ever. This concludes our deep dive into the 10 singers silenced by organized crime. We have traveled from the cartel badlands of Mexico to the streets of Jamaica, from the hospitals of Matamoros to the stadiums of Chile. We have seen that a microphone is a powerful instrument, but it offers no protection against the bullet. If this series opened your eyes to the dangerous reality of the music world, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan and history buff you know, and make sure you are subscribed and have the bell turned on. We have a massive new investigation starting next week that digs into the dark secrets of Hollywood's biggest child stars.